was sort of nice to take the basketball court and have the announcers say, the Minneapolis Lakers, the world champion.
We became this team that was somewhat magical. And the more we won, the more magical we became.
West throws it up. He makes it. West threw it up and makes it.
For 10 years, there wasn't a better team in the history of the NBA for sustaining excellence.
Oh, what a play. Slam dunk.
I want my team to be remembered as a great team. No matter what you did to them, you couldn't stop them. But in other words, I want people to say that team was unstoppable.
Kobe on the move. Lobs for O'Neal for the dunk.
Yeah, get a look at the Dynasty. This is the next one right here.
In the early days of the NBA, the Minneapolis Lakers' George Mikan faced his younger brother Eddie, the center for the Chicago Stags. With friends and family looking on, George showed no brotherly love to Eddie, scoring on him at will and breaking his nose in the process.
After the game, we all went out and sat down and talking, and George's mother, she said, Georgie, why you beat up on your brother Eddie? He says, Mama, if you'd have been out there playing, I'd have beat up on you too.
In many ways, the NBA owes its existence to this fierce competitor. In 1949, the fledgling Basketball Association of America realized it needed stars to survive. So it merged with the rival National Basketball League and landed its biggest star.
The first nationally prominent basketball player to star in the NBA was Big George Mikan. And he was a wonderful personality. 6 feet 10 inches tall, big broad-shouldered man.
He'd plant himself down low, and he was big and strong, and he'd turn into you with his elbows and knock you out of the way. You couldn't play him, he was so strong.
And he always went to one spot, and he always shot with his right hand. So I said, I'm going to get to the spot ahead of him. I'm going to overplay him on the right side. I'll box him out. I did those things when we played him, and I held him to 42 points.
Mikan wasn't only the league's best player, he was the foundation of the NBA's effort to become part of America's sports landscape.
Well, Mikan was like a Michael Jordan, a Larry Bird, a Magic Johnson. That's what he meant to the league.
He was the biggest draw in the league. He played before capacity crowds almost whenever and wherever he played.
And the NBA would go to great lengths to capitalize on Mikan's popularity.
One night we were walking toward the Garden to get ready to play against the Knicks. And I looked up at the marquee, and there it says on the marquee, George Mikan versus the Knicks. And I said, oh boy, they shouldn't have done that. So anyhow, we got into the locker room, and the guys were really giving it to me, and there was no one dressing. And I said, all right, what's going on? And they started saying, well, you got the publicity, you're on the marquee, go out there and play them. And so they really razzed me for quite a bit, and finally they decided to come along.
But despite the efforts to promote Mikan as a one-man show, it was clear to those who faced the Lakers that he had an outstanding supporting cast.
He had two great players with him. Jim Pollard, who I considered a tremendous basketball player, probably the purest player of that era, and a guy named Vern Mickelson. Those three guys were probably three of the greatest big men in the history of the game.
The Lakers' big three of Michelson, Pollard, and Mikan score 73 points as George brings up 2 more.
And with the fiery Slater Martin controlling the backcourt, the Lakers had quickly emerged as the team to beat in the NBA. In 1950, Mikan dominated the league while leading Minneapolis to the NBA Finals against the Syracuse Nationals. A 40-foot buzzer beater in Game 1 gave the Lakers command of the series, and they would go on to win the first NBA championship.
These are the Minneapolis Lakers, champion basketeers.
It was sort of nice to take the basketball court and have the announcers say, the Minneapolis Lakers, the world champions. And that's quite an accolade, and we try to live up to it.
And live up to it the Lakers did. With Mikan leading the way, Minneapolis would win 3 consecutive NBA championships between 1952 and 54. By the time their run was through, they had captured 5 titles in 6 years, becoming the NBA's original dynasty.
There's something about that Lakers score that makes the fans want more.
Eventually, injuries and time would catch up with Minneapolis. Mikan retired in 1954, but the legacy of the Lakers and the NBA's first superstar would endure.
He did inject a lot of life into the league. That whole team did. Almost every one of those players are in the Hall of Fame.
We had a great team. We played as a team, and we enjoyed every minute of it.
Soon after George Mikan's retirement, the Lakers would fall to the bottom of the NBA. But they used the first pick in the 1958 draft to select a player who would not only change the direction of the franchise, but of the game itself, the University of Seattle's Elgin Baylor.
Elgin was a new kind of ball player. First of all, he could just jump. Nobody ever seen jumping like that before.
Up and over the greatest defensive player in the game, Bill Russell, a dunk shot.
I used to kid everybody I wore out with the side of my Converse basketball shoes by throwing him the ball and running to the other corner, because that was the best play we had, was get it to Elgin and get out of the way.
Modern basketball began with Elgin Baylor. Every single hesitation move, every single reverse layup, every single between the legs dribble, every single spinning move that you see in a routine manner in every single NBA game or college game played today owes its existence to the mind of one man, Elgin Baylor.
With his groundbreaking skills, Baylor instantly revived the Lakers, leading them to the NBA Finals in just his rookie season. But they would fall in 4 games to the team that would become their nemesis for years to come, the Boston Celtics. Despite the brilliance of Baylor, the Lakers fell on hard times both on the court and at the box office, and they would soon become the first NBA franchise on the West Coast.
We've never been to LA before, and here we are. The Lakers were so happy to get out of all that cold weather in Minneapolis and get to LA, where Hollywood and the palm trees and so forth.
The Lakers made their Los Angeles debut in 1960. That year, the team would also move west in a different respect, drafting a 6'3" guard with an abundance of talent named Jerry West.
Jerry was the type of player that, would embarrass you. He was so quick and fast. I mean, he'd just blow right by you.
That's Jerry West. This fella can shoot a little bit.
He was the guy I did not want to play because he was so quick. And he could leap and he could get to a spot and all of a sudden he's up. You don't even have time to get up and try to block the shot. That's how good he was.
But there was more to West than just his great skill. He was a fierce competitor who was at his best in the game's deciding moments.
A very special person going to the wire. We always went to Jerry West. The last shot of the game, he's going to make it. And his nickname was Mr. Clutch.
By West's second season, he and Baylor had become one of the league's most lethal duos, combining for nearly 70 points a game. Their entertaining style helped make the Lakers a hit in Tinseltown. And Los Angeles rolled into the 1962 NBA Finals, where they'd face the league's newest dynasty, Red Auerbach's 3-time defending champion Boston Celtics, led by superstars Bob Cousy and Bill Russell.
We knew we were playing the best team, the better team. But we always felt that we could win.
The series would be a showcase for the Lakers' young stars. With the score tied and time running out in Game 3, the first finals game ever played in LA, West would show signs of a legend in the making.
The ball is out to Sam Jones, veteran Boston guard. Watch West. He taps it away, tries to beat the clock, beats Cousy, beats the clock. The Lakers win.
In Game 5, it would be Baylor's turn to astound as he scored a finals record 61 points. The series came down to a 7th game at Boston Garden, a moment that seemed scripted for Mr. Clutch.
Here we are in the 7th game at Boston. 5 seconds left in the game. Timeout, score's tied at 100. We took the ball out at midcourt. I ran up and got the ball at the top of the key. So naturally, my first option, I looked at Jerry West. And unfortunately, he wasn't open. So my second option now is Frank Selvey. He's wide open. He got the ball squared away for the jump shot to make us the world champions.
I'll watch this final play. It'll be Sylvie again. A big moment.
And it looked good to me. And I said, my gosh, this ball is going in.
He does not make it. Russell the rebound, and this ball game goes into overtime.
It hit the rim and kicked up in the air. The game ended, and we go to overtime. And Boston won 110 to 107.
Auerbach is lighting up the cigar. And the buzzer goes off. It's all over. The Boston Celtics are once again the world champions.
By the way, I still call Frank all the time, long distance. He lives in South Carolina. When he says hello, I say, nice shot, Frank, and hang up on him. I won't let him forget it.
Sometimes good things don't happen to players who compete at a very high level, who play at a very high level. But I've always thought maybe if Frank had made that shot, maybe the course of history would have changed a little bit.
For West and Baylor, who had their whole careers ahead of them, the '62 finals could have been a stepping stone to a run of titles and a potential dynasty. Instead, it only foreshadowed the disappointment that would follow.
Time ticking away, and the ball game is over.
4 times in the next 6 years, LA would advance to the NBA Finals. And each time, the individual talents of the Lakers would be eclipsed by the team play of the Celtics.
West all alone. Look at Russell come down. And what a play by Russell!
They had great chemistry. They had great depth. And Bill Russell made them special. We just did not have anyone to negate Bill Russell. It was just simple as that.
In 1968, after losing to the Celtics in the finals for a 6th time, the frustrated Lakers and their new owner, Jack Kent Cooke, were determined to get a player who could match Bill Russell in the middle. That player was the game's most dominant force, Wilt Chamberlain.
With guys like Jerry West and Elgin Baylor, I feel very, very happy that I'm being traded to a team that I believe may stand a chance to go down the record as one of the best teams in basketball ever.
The Lakers' opportunity to finally dethrone the Celtics would come in the 1969 finals, and an LA triumph seemed imminent. Russell, Boston's 35-year-old player-coach, was in his final season, and the team had barely made the playoffs.
We all felt that we had the best team, the better team. We had the best record. We beat them during the season. We were the better team.
And West, knowing that this could be the Lakers' last and best chance to beat Boston, was playing the finest basketball of his life.
Jerry West, he had the best championship of any player that I've ever seen. And he averaged over 40 points a game against the Celtics. He was unstoppable because he wanted to win.
Despite the heroics of West, the Celtics were able to extend the series to a 7th game. But for the first time, it would be at the Forum in Los Angeles, where Jack Kent Cooke had planned a special celebration.
Jack Kent Cooke was the owner of the Lakers. He put out a sheet in all the seats. When the Lakers win the championship, the USC band would play Happy Days Are Here Again. The balloons in the rafters would fall down, and Chick Hearns would interview Elgin Baylor, Jerry West, and Wilt Chamberlain in that particular order.
But the Lakers fell behind early and were in even deeper trouble when Chamberlain left the game in the 4th quarter with an injured knee. He pleaded to re-enter the game, but Laker coach Butch Van Bradekoff, who had feuded with Wilt all season, ignored his big man's pleas.
Van Bradekoff refused to put him back into the game, and Jack Kent Cooke came down and told Van Bradekoff to do it, and Van Bradekoff turned around to the owner and expressed a very simple epithet to get out of there. I mean, it was madness.
Even with Wilt on the bench, LA fought back and pulled to within a point. With time running out, Boston's Don Nelson launched a shot that bounced high off the rim, just as Frank Selby's had 7 years earlier.
Erickson taps the ball to Nelson, whose shot bounces straight up and then straight through.
Don Nelson made a shot that I've never seen in all the years of basketball except that one time. I mean, it was absolutely extraordinary.
And the Celtics, they have done it again. A spectacular finish.
Jerry West was named the Finals MVP after averaging more than 40 points a game, the only time a player on the losing team had won the award. But Russell and the Celtics walked off with yet another championship trophy. The Lakers were left to ponder their 7th finals defeat in 11 years at the hands of Boston.
No way should we have lost to Boston. Just no way. I mean, I still don't know how we lost to Boston. It's a mystery to me.
I think that was the toughest loss. I think that affected the players that had been there all the years more than anyone.
I can remember the champagne bottles popping in the dressing room next door, and the Celtics celebrating, and Jerry West, after everybody cleared out, was still sitting in his seat with his uniform on. He hadn't taken a shower. Everybody else is gone. He's still just sitting there. How it would eat at him because he's such a winner, but yet the World Championship eluded him all these years.
I thought we should have won in 1969. I thought we had the better team. And those are the things that leave the emotional scars. Even to this day, it's like you can almost recall the ghost of the past. It doesn't feel very good.
The following season would bring more late-game heroics from West in the finals.
2 seconds, 1 second. West throws it up. He makes it. West threw it up and makes it.
But in the end, the Lakers' anguish would continue as they would once again lose in the 7th game, this time to the New York Knicks. When they were ushered out of the 1971 playoffs by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's Milwaukee Bucks, it seemed the likely end of the championship dream for this group of Lakers. Chamberlain and West were both in the twilight of their careers, and Elgin Baylor would retire 8 games into the 1972 season. But the Lakers had made some crucial additions: sharpshooting guard Gail Goodrich, and former Celtic Bill Sharman, their new coach whose presence seemed to spark something in the team's psyche.
He made us believe in ourselves. He made me believe in myself that we could do it one more time. And I'm looking at him like, is he crazy? How are we going to win with these guys right here?
It was probably one of the few times in my career I really felt that we were a team. Most of the time, our team comprised of Elgin Baylor and myself trying to score 35 or 50 every night. That's not the way to play basketball. And it was like a breakthrough for us. It was just a sense of one person playing the game.
Suddenly, everything seemed to click for the Lakers as they won an astonishing 33 straight games, the longest winning streak in the history of professional sports.
At last, all of a sudden things are happening our way. I mean, we were getting some of the good turns. We were getting some of the bounce of the ball. And so all of a sudden, we became this team that was somewhat magical. And the more we won, the more magical we became.
It was that one opening in the clouds. This just seemed really easy to do. It seemed like we were destined to win.
After 8 straight losses in the finals dating to 1959, the 72 Lakers would finally win an NBA championship, defeating New York in 5 games.
Goodrich passes under to Wilt. He puts it up and slams it.
The Lakers had not only ended more than a decade of frustration, they'd established themselves as one of the greatest teams in the history of the NBA. After one of the most remarkable seasons in sports history, LA tried to defend its hard-earned crown. But the Lakers fell to the Knicks in the finals in 5 games. Following the loss, the aging Lakers began to disband. Longtime great Jerry West retired, as did Wilt Chamberlain. But in 1975, a new big man arrived, the best in the game. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, acquired in a trade with Milwaukee, possessed the game's most devastating weapon, the skyhook. But Abdul-Jabbar couldn't carry the Lakers by himself, and the team would finish the decade without reaching another NBA Finals. Heading into the 1980 season, they were a team in need of new life, and they would find it with the first pick in the NBA draft.
The Los Angeles Lakers select Irvin Magic Johnson, Michigan State, 6'8", 200 pounds.
Magic was nothing short of a revelation, a 6'8" point guard who had led Michigan State to the national championship. His arrival was met by the Lakers and the NBA with great anticipation.
But I want you to know that this man has a smile that lights up a television screen from here to Bangor, Maine.
And from his very first game, Magic made it clear that Laker basketball would never be played the same way again.
It was a tight game.
And finally it came down to the last second. I can still see Kareem cutting across the middle.
To Kareem, skyhook up and good. Lakers win.
I'm running over there, you know, full speed. I'm jumping up. I'm choking him. Yeah.
And Magic Johnson is out there celebrating like they just won the NCAA championship.
He turns, so serious. I said, "Bob, we got 81 more games. Quit choking me." But it was one point I think that they really realized about me was that I was going to be doing that for 81 more games.
Magic's enthusiasm was contagious, and he helped spark Kareem to an MVP season. The Lakers would ride their new tandem all the way to the NBA Finals, where they would face Dr. J and the Philadelphia 76ers. After splitting the first 4 games, the Lakers' fortune seemed to turn in the pivotal 5th game.
Kareem turns underneath, puts it up and scores on a finger roll. 5, but Kareem's hurt. Kareem turned an ankle.
But the Lakers captain would return, leading Los Angeles to a stirring victory and a 3-2 series lead. His injury, however, would prevent him from making the trip to Philadelphia for Game 6.
So we get on a plane to go to Philly. And I'm like the last one on. So, you know, we all got our favorite seats. And Kareem's seat was vacant. So I said, never fear, guys. Magic is here.
A young man by the name of Magic Johnson is going to start at center.
Magic's confidence lifted his team's spirits, and he backed up his words with one of the most electrifying games in NBA playoff history.
Magic, one has to work. So beautiful pass by the rookie.
Johnson played all 5 positions on the floor, and he would finish with 42 points, 15 rebounds, and 7 assists, leading the Lakers to their first NBA championship since 1972.
And the most valuable player is Magic Johnson. He starts at center, plays forward and guard.
This is your first year and you're here. How many more of these would you like to get under your belt?
About 20.
But in 1981, the Lakers faced internal conflict. Were they a running team led by Johnson or a traditional half-court team anchored by Abdul-Jabbar? The end result was a first-round playoff loss to the Houston Rockets. And 11 games into the following season, LA would fire head coach Paul Westhead, replacing him with one of his assistants, former Laker reserve Pat Riley. When Riley took over, he realized that while Kareem may have been the Lakers' best player, the team would be defined by Magic Johnson.
He had an incredible passion to play basketball. His style of play, his personality was the identity of what that team was going to be about.
Magic is straight down the middle. Still going, still going. Oh! Highlight film!
The Lakers attacked their opponents in waves, bringing a new excitement to the league.
We didn't care who we were playing. We didn't care how many points we were down. Our whole goal was to run you into the ground.
Nixon in the front court, 3-on-3. Left side to Magic. Magic all the way. Spin it up and in.
With Magic at the controls, the Lakers' fast break style became known as Showtime.
Now, Showtime was coming down on the fast break, looking left, and throwing right.
Showtime. Woo! How did he see him?
Jones wanted it, but Magic wants it more. Dribble behind the back. Oh, what a play! Slam dunk!
But the success of Showtime was much more than Magic Johnson. Over the years, the Lakers would be loaded with players who fit perfectly into their fast break system. Michael Cooper, Norm Nixon, and Jamal Wilkes, Byron Scott, and the game's ultimate finisher, James Worthy.
Oh, man. When he put it in one hand, Statue of Liberty, bam. Oh, it's over. It's over.
Here come the Lakers.
Pass down the middle of Worthy, slam dunk.
And when all else failed, the Lakers could always count on Kareem.
Showtime was that beautiful sky hook. That's the most beautiful shot that I've ever seen in basketball.
The Lakers' flamboyant style was perfectly suited for Los Angeles, and the Forum became more than a place to see a basketball game. It became a Hollywood scene.
I wouldn't do an hour series in those days because I said I'm not going to miss those games. I don't care what team it was they were playing. There was always a magic happening out on that floor.
Magic! The crowd will be talking about that for a week.
You're sitting there, and then all of a sudden you're up out of your seat. And you don't know how you stood up. You didn't know that you were up because it captivated you. It put you right here.
Magic Johnson leads the attack. Look at that pass. Oh, what a show.
Great play.
Oh, what a show.
With 22-year-old Magic Johnson running the show, the Lakers had become an NBA power. And in 1982, they'd captured their second championship in 3 years. But the Lakers were doing more than just winning. Their exciting style was bringing the league to new heights of popularity. They weren't doing it alone, however. On the East Coast, Larry Bird was doing for the Celtics what Magic had done for the Lakers.
Look out, Bird's in the crowd trying to get a loose ball back, and by golly, he does it.
Bird, who had lost to Magic in the 1979 NCAA Finals, had brought his Celtics to a championship in 1981. And like Magic, he played with passion and unselfishness.
That one of them was the urban black kid from Michigan, and the other one was the manure-kicking country boy from Indiana, and one of them with the Lakers, and one of them with the Celtics. I mean, that was perfect. That's central casting.
In Magic and Bird, the NBA now had a rivalry to match any in sports. And the Lakers and Celtics took on the personalities of their leading men.
The Lakers were about showtime, and the Celtics were about work ethic, and that thing just sort of built to a frenzy.
The blue-collar Celtics, the kind of white-collar Lakers. You know, fancy style, old-fashioned, rudimentary style. You couldn't have concocted any better rivalry than this.
Making the rivalry even more intense was that the teams had a history together, one that was still boiling over from the 1960s.
We just simply developed a rivalry that was born out of some deep-seated feelings of hatred. You know, even though we didn't hate them as individuals, we hated the Celtics, and the Celtics hated the Lakers.
In 1984, Boston and Los Angeles would meet in the NBA Finals for the first time in 15 years, and the entire sporting world was watching.
Hey, they won the East, we won the West. So it's like everybody just get ready, sit back, and let's enjoy it.
These franchises had met 7 previous times in the finals, and all 7 times the Celtics had won. Now the Lakers would have to confront their demons once again.
Coming in the Boston Garden and the old building and seeing Red sitting up there, you could just feel the crowd.
As the series opened, the Lakers were determined to banish the ghosts of the past.
They are running the Celtics off the Boston Garden court.
But the Celtics would issue a bold response, and when they imposed their physical style of play on the series, the Lakers began to buckle.
Magic takes the ball, and they throw. Magic throws it away. 3 seconds. Worst comes to worst, the Celtics will have to foul, and there's a steal by Henderson who lays it up and in.
The leprechaun at work here at Boston Garden. Babel things have happened, and this will be one of them.
We had opportunities in Game 2 to close them out at Boston Garden. You know, we had opportunities in Game 4 to close them out. We had opportunities to close them out, and we didn't.
Instead, it was the Celtics who would finish off the Lakers.
Here's Magic, off the mark. Lakers had several chances, and here's Larry Bird chucking down the court.
The Celtics went on to win the series in 7 hard-fought games, and even in a new era with new players, the Lakers still found themselves unable to break the Boston jinx.
The Boston Celtics are the NBA World Champions.
Boy, does it hurt when you know it's not going to be your record.
I think the team really felt that we could have or should have won that series against the Celtics. In inability of the Lakers to beat the Celtics in a championship series left a bad taste in our mouth.
It breaks your heart. I mean, the game breaks your heart. Absolutely breaks your heart more than anything else in your life could ever break your heart. And that did in 1984. I mean, absolutely, without a doubt, was devastated by that loss.
Every day I woke up in the summer, I'm just replaying those games over and over in that series, and it was like a dead man walking.
But Riley would use his team's disappointment as motivation for the 1985 season.
You know, the Celtics thought that we were sissies, and they used to call us the LA Fakers, not the LA Lakers. And if you're going to tolerate this, then you're never going to beat this team. And we spent the whole year, that year in 1985, just thinking about the thought of getting back to the finals.
He made us believe that for the next 8 months, you had to dream and think and eat and believe in nothing but basketball. You know, everything outside of basketball didn't matter. And that's what we believed. I mean, we were that driven to win a championship.
The Lakers roared back into the finals, and as fate would have it, they would get an immediate chance for revenge.
The Boston Celtics and the Los Angeles Lakers get ready for the World Series of Basketball, the NBA Championship Series.
Our team needed the Celtics, wanted the Celtics, had to purge the Celtics from our conscious souls in order to feel sort of complete.
But instead of marching toward redemption, the Lakers were stumbling out of the gate as the series began.
Lakers are totally out of their game right now, and they're not used to this.
Parrish is beaten to fire up the court every single time.
The Celtics would overwhelm the Lakers, handing them a humiliating defeat.
No contest, game one. Give it to the Boston Celtics by a wide margin.
38-year-old Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had played the worst playoff game of his career. Many thought he and the Lakers were finished after losing by 34 points. The worst loss in finals history, it was dubbed the Memorial Day Massacre.
Pat Riley, he drilled us so bad. He made us watch that game over and over and over again. But I think that was the best thing that happened for us.
The Lakers were determined to put their nightmare behind them, and they would do just that.
See the aggressiveness of the Lakers. Bullet pass, Magic to James Worthy. 4 on the shot clock. Kareem goes up and stuffs it through.
In game 2, Kareem and the Lakers would come storming back and prove their critics wrong.
I tell you, Kareem is really responding to the challenge of this ball game. Wow.
Well, it feels good, to know that you're not dead. They had people throwing dirt on my face. It's good to know that that was a little premature.
Kareem's performance would inspire his teammates, and the Lakers would grab a 3-2 series lead.
Long skyhook, in and out, and there's Magic Johnson.
And as the series headed back to Boston for Game 6, LA would try to become the first team in finals history to eliminate the Celtics on their home floor.
As soon as we hit town, it was like the devil hitting town. It's like, uh-oh. I mean, the baggage guy at the airport. Oh, Magic! Larry's gonna kill you tomorrow.
But while the Lakers of the past had fallen victim to the Celtic mystique, this team would be different.
Magic right side to Worthy, slam dunk. And here come the Lakers. Magic.
There was a time in the fourth quarter when Kareem hit a sweeping skyhook, and when that shot went in, and he turned, and he put his fists up in the air like this, and he ran back down the court, I knew, he knew, we knew, they knew this was over.
The Lakers are winning it. 3 in 6 years. LA comes to Boston and wins the world title.
The Lakers hadn't only won the title, they'd done it exactly where they wanted to, on the parquet floor of Boston Garden.
That whole mental and historical thing, the jinx, whatever have you, it all died at that point.
I'm watching the game by myself at home and really loving it. And all of a sudden the phone rings. I grab the phone and a voice says, "Are you watching?" And it was Tommy Hawkins, my old teammate with the Lakers. I said, yeah, I'm watching, Hawk. He said, "I've got my uniform on." He had his old Laker uniform on in front of the TV screen, watching this game. Now that is when you really know that, hey, that they had our number and we finally could get this done and get a win. This was incredible.
After finally conquering the Celtics and winning their third title in 6 years, the Lakers felt invincible. But in the 1986 playoffs, the Rockets would bring them back to earth.
Sampson. A miraculous shot has given the Houston Rockets the Western Conference Championship.
The 5-game loss to Houston stunned the Lakers, who had fully expected another showdown against the Celtics in the NBA Finals. And coupled with the aging of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, it could have sent the team into a state of decline. But Pat Riley realized the change could come from within.
I'll never forget that day as long as I live. He comes to me and he says, it's going to be your season. I want you to score more because in order for us to win, you have to become more of a dominant player. So he said, do you have anything you want to say? I said, did you ask Kareem?
Riley's bold move was just the remedy the Lakers needed. Magic flourished in his new role, and the team thrived with him as its new focal point.
Here come the Lakers. Magic.
Johnson would win the first of his 3 MVP awards, and the Lakers advanced to the 1987 Finals, where they'd renew acquaintances with their old rivals, the reigning champion Boston Celtics. And in Game 4, as the series reached its most crucial moment, Magic would take matters into his own hands.
They up one. Coach Riley called to play for Kareem. And I got it, and Kevin McHale basically switched out.
I saw that Magic was going to, take the last shot. I could see it in his eyes. I could see him say, like, this is not happening. And so I got to go.
To the left goes Magic. He's got it. He didn't shoot it. 5 seconds left. Magic down the middle, just what I thought. A hook shot at 12. Good!
Magic's hook would give the Lakers command of the series, and it sealed his place as one of the game's true legends.
Magic's just a great basketball player. He's the best I've ever seen, Unbelievable. I don't know what to say.
The Lakers went on to win their 4th title of the decade, but at the victory parade, Riley made sure their celebration would be short-lived.
I feel grateful to be part of the team, and I'm guaranteeing everybody here, next year we're going to win it again.
And all the players looked at each other like, what is this guy doing?
My mouth dropped, my heart stopped pounding, and all of a sudden I started thinking about getting ready to do it again.
Back-to-back hadn't been accomplished in over 19 years. And that was our challenge.
He said, you're just going to be another team that won championships. Now you can be a team of history. You can have a dynasty.
If the Lakers were going to make history, they'd have to earn it. Los Angeles scrapped its way to a 62-win season.
The ball rolls free. Magic wants it. Magic's got it. Bounce on there! Rambis scores!
And on their way to the finals, they'd have to endure 2 grueling 7-game series. But not even that was enough to fully shed the Lakers of their Showtime image.
Everybody gave the Celtics credit for being a smart team and being a lunch pail, blue-collar type team, but they never gave us that credit. It was always fancy-free, and we would just outrun you. So we wanted to prove everybody wrong.
The 1988 Finals against the Detroit Pistons, one of the toughest teams ever to play in the NBA, would give the Lakers the opportunity they'd been waiting for. A chance not only to define themselves, but their place in NBA history. The younger, more physical Pistons would push the Lakers to yet another 7th game. But LA would show resiliency many doubted it had.
Underneath the Scott scores!
People really thought that you can just roll the ball out and we could just play. We were much better than that. If you wanted to fight us in a game, we would do that. If you wanted to just try to beat us up as far as just physically beat us up, we would play that way. If you wanted to just play the game of basketball, we would play that way.
Russell was knocked away to Magic. No look to Worthy, underneath score!
The Lakers have won it again. They'll never forget this moment. Took 19 years to win them back-to-back.
Back-to-back! Yeah!
Well, would you like to step up here and guarantee a third straight to start this off, Coach?
The Showtime Lakers had left a legacy as the team of the 80s, ending the decade with 8 finals appearances and 5 NBA titles. They'd established themselves as the greatest dynasty since the 60s, and had proven they were a team not only of style, but of substance and of history. After a decade of glory, the Los Angeles Lakers entered the 90s as a team in flux. Heading into the 1991 season, Mike Dunleavy took over for coaching legend Pat Riley. And when Magic and the Lakers fell to the title-hungry Michael Jordan in that year's finals, it was clear that the torch of NBA supremacy had been passed.
He came up and snatched it. Here, give it here, Magic. It's my turn now.
Just 4 months later, the curtain would officially come down on the Showtime era.
Because of the HIV virus that I have attained, I will have to retire from the Lakers today.
Magic's abrupt exit from the game left the Lakers starless and leaderless. The team would spend the early 90s in a constant state of frustration. And despite a host of new coaches, this once proud franchise realized that something more was needed to recapture its glory.
The Los Angeles Lakers have acquired a 24-year-old superstar who we feel is going to bring us to that incredible level that this franchise has enjoyed in Los Angeles.
In acquiring 7-foot 1-inch Shaquille O'Neal, the Lakers once again possessed the league's biggest star.
What a combination of finesse and power!
I knew that they had great tradition, great history, and I knew that if I would come, then I would have big shoes to fill.
Shaq was joined that same year by the young and supremely talented Kobe Bryant. Fresh out of high school, Kobe brought a new age of showmanship to Los Angeles, where he electrified fans with his dazzling skills. Yet despite their individual brilliance, LA's 2 leading men couldn't carry the Lakers back to the top of the NBA, constantly falling short in the playoffs.
Bryant for the tie. Airball again by Kobe Bryant. And the Utah Jazz going to the Western Conference Finals.
Before you succeed, you must learn how to fail, and I just hope that I don't have to, fail too many more times.
Shaq and the Lakers would suffer 3 consecutive postseason failures, including 2 embarrassing sweeps. So in 1999, LA would look to change the fortunes of the franchise with one bold stroke.
Without further ado, the new coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, Phil Jackson.
After 6 titles as coach of the Bulls, Phil Jackson knew that his first step with the Lakers would be getting his 2 best players to see eye to eye.
There were some personal goals that were standing in front of the group goals, and that all had to be kind of figured out.
The first time in my career, a coach came in and said, look, this is what you're going to do, this is what you're going to master. If you're not going to do that, then you're not going to be here.
Under Jackson's guidance, Shaq and Kobe began to blend their talents. Like Weston Chamberlain and Magic and Kareem before them, they emerged as a dynamic 1-2 punch, and the Lakers rampaged through the 2000 season.
Those 2 have complemented each other as well as any 2 Laker players in history.
But their true test as leaders would come in the 2000 Western Conference Finals against Portland. The Lakers had let a 3-1 series lead slip away. And in Game 7, it seemed they would add another chapter to their saga of playoff misery, as the Trailblazers took a commanding lead into the 4th quarter.
This is a 15-point game. The Lakers are at their mercy right now. They totally collapsed.
Success, was a long journey. And it's definitely, in this case, been long because of the failures we've had. It comes a point where you grow through those failures and you find a way to fight through, the next adversity that you face.
The Lakers would do just that, as their 2 superstars carried the team to a stunning 4th quarter comeback, and ultimately one of the most dramatic victories in franchise history.
Kobe on the move. Lobs for O'Neal for the dunk.
Shaq would continue their spectacular play in the finals. And with LA's victory, the team's championship tradition had been reborn.
And the Lakers are the 2000 NBA champions.
They're going wild at Staples Center.
Yet even after bringing the championship back to Los Angeles, Bryant and O'Neal were far from satisfied.
Like Kobe said, the trophy is home and where it belongs, and we're going to get another one next year. Can you take it?
In 2001, the Lakers would steamroll through the playoffs, sweeping 3 straight opponents in the West.
There's no team in Laker history ever played at a higher level of perfection than this team is doing.
And Los Angeles would complete its remarkable run by defeating Philadelphia in the finals, taking its place alongside the greatest NBA teams of all time.
You had the best record ever in the history of the NBA playoffs. You should be proud of that.
Yeah, get a look at the Dynasty. This is the next one right here.
Good evening, welcome everybody to the 2002 NBA Finals. The Lakers go for a three-peat.
No Los Angeles or Minneapolis Lakers team ever won the finals in a sweep. Tonight, the Lakers can do just that.
Here's Bryant giving it up. O'Neal. A facial served up by Shaquille O'Neal.
A three-peat and a sweep for the world champion Los Angeles Lakers.
There can only be one champion, and we have a worthy one. The Los Angeles Lakers. They are a team for the ages.
The history of the Lakers is filled with legendary teams and players. And as today's Lakers carry the tradition into the future, they can look to their predecessors for inspiration.
The city of Los Angeles is used to winning basketball, and the pride that comes along with that is instilled in us.
To have my name mentioned in the same breath as Jerry West, Magic, Chamberlain, Kareem, it'll be an honor. I want you to hang my jersey up there when it's all said and done.